1945. By the end of World War II, more than 55 million people have died, and Europe lay in ruins. Russia's Red Army takes Berlin at a cost of 200,000 of its soldiers. Stalin wants to keep the capital of defeated Germany as a spoil of war. But as the ruins are cleared, brick by brick, the Russians have to share Berlin with the Western Allies. This will turn out to be a recipe for disaster. The German capital and country will be jointly administered by the 4 victorious Allies in 4 separate zones. In the West, France, Britain, and the US. In the East, the Soviet Union. And in the middle of the Soviet zone, Berlin is divided again.
Stalin had referred to West Berlin as a thorn in the flesh of the Russian occupation of Eastern Germany. Khrushchev publicly declared it to be a malignant tumor. I mean, these images of kind of a disease in the body politic of the Eastern Bloc called West Berlin were used by Soviet leaders frequently.
In 1948, Stalin blocks land routes to West Berlin to force the Western Allies out. The American and British airlift supplies West Berlin for 9 months until Stalin gives in. And from 1949, there are 2 German states.
Very rapidly, both Germany, but especially Berlin, became points of confrontation. And Berlin then served this purpose for 40 years as a point of confrontation, not just between 2 ideological systems, but between 2 centers of power who were vying for control of Europe.
East Germany, the GDR, with West Berlin stuck in the middle. The only border still open is in Berlin. Between 1949 and 1960, up to 3 million Germans leave the communist East, heading west, via West Berlin. The East German population is shrinking, dangerously.
In 1960, 200,000 fled. By June 1961, another 160,000 had gone. It was draining the country's lifeblood. East Germany's weak economy desperately needed its workforce. The communists were afraid the economy would collapse. It was becoming increasingly urgent to do something that would solve the problem of West Berlin.
It's still easy to cross between sectors in Berlin, just by showing identity papers. East Germany's communist leader, Walter Ulbricht, badly needs a permanent solution.
Ulbricht was a very determined man, and he saw this as his point to start pushing the idea of a barrier, a fence, a wall, call it what you will, again. And he did. And so as we move into 1960-61, he's there constantly on his trips to Moscow, constantly on the phone, saying, this is what we need to do. This is the only way we're going to solve this problem.
Ulbricht needs and gets from Moscow, the center of Soviet power, permission to build a barrier. But when asked about his intentions at a June 15th press conference, he lies.
There are people in West Germany who want us to mobilize the construction workers of the GDR to construct a wall. Is that right? No one has any intention of building a wall.
In Moscow, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev sees a chance to neutralize the Allies in Berlin or even remove them.
Khrushchev said that having Berlin was like being able to squeeze the testicles of the West whenever he felt like it. Whenever he wanted to cause pain to the West, he just squeezed Berlin. He made difficulties for them.
And there is a bonus opportunity. Khrushchev can test the resolve of the new young US President, John F. Kennedy.
Kennedy said, don't touch West Berlin. And the assumption that Khrushchev, and indeed Ulbricht, his East German colleague, can make from that is, as long as we don't actually infringe on Allied rights in West Berlin at this point, the Allies will do nothing. And they were absolutely right.
At the beginning of August 1961, West Berlin is preoccupied with hosting its International Film Festival, totally unaware of the impending disaster.
It all come to a highlight on the 13th of August, in the middle of the night, when we got the call, that something's going on.
Harold Smith is a U.S. tank commander in West Berlin. He's sent to take a look and maybe do more.
They're repairing the roads. What are they doing with all of this material? And then we went down there, of course. We had a countdown going, and all of those tanks along the wall were going to just go crush that wall down. But 1 minute before we were to do it, the phone rang, and it was President Kennedy. And he said, he told his State Department representative, don't touch the wall.
The East German state is strong. Erich Honecker has forced his people to respect him. Now he wants the world to recognize his state.
On the one hand, they were seeking respectability. They wanted to be seen as a state that functioned, that was on an equal basis with all other states. But at the same time, they didn't actually want to allow their own citizens the freedoms that membership of the international community allowed.
Détente is the magic word. In the 1970s, there's a series of important international agreements.
All's well that ends well.
At last, the regime has won full recognition throughout the world, in exchange for signing away a little more freedom to its citizens.
Technically, they were now allowed freedom of movement, freedom to choose where they worked, freedom of expression. The communist governments would frequently sign these manifestos and international agreements and simply not allow them to be carried out on their own soil.
Instead, they build the wall even higher.